Welcome to the Games Gymnastics Podcast. Thank you for listening. My name is Winston Powell, and today I just want to go through a bit of who I am, what I've done in the sport, and what I hope to give you in these coming episodes with the podcast, what I hope to achieve. So, a little bit about me. I've been a gymnast literally my whole life, did preschool gymnastics back when I was 1 or 2 years old. So when I say I've been doing this for my whole life, I do mean it. And I've done 5 internationals for Great Britain. I was the under-18 English champion last year. I'm still training, I'm still working, and I want to be the best gymnast I can be, and I feel like I'm nowhere near that yet. So this isn't just me looking back at my experiences and looking back at other people's experiences and a story that for you to hear and for you to learn from. I'm still living it, which I think is really helpful, and I'm still learning and growing, and I hope that this podcast can help encompass that. And so I'm learning from it as well, and everyone I interview will be learning from it as well. So I think that's quite helpful. But I've been doing this for my whole life, like I said, and I've been to France twice for internationals, Turkey once, Germany twice for internationals. So pretty much just Europe. But I went to Junior Worlds last year, made 3 finals, the all-around and P-bars and high bar finals, which I was incredibly happy to have made. I've, like I said, I was English champion last year, which is how I qualified for the Junior Worlds last year, and still going at it this year. Haven't done as much, but I've had some injuries here and there this year, so but I'm still training, still working, and ultimately this is for other gymnasts to learn what other gymnasts are doing, implement little bits here and there that you think will help you. And so we're all learning from each other. And I think that's one of the best parts about the sport. Like, say, for instance, you see something on social media and you see a skill done on social media and you've never tried it before. You never even thought it might work for you, but you try it out in the gym and it's perfect for you. That's the sort of thing I want to go for. So that's just basic level. I started gymnastics when I was 1 or 2, like I said, and it was just preschool gymnastics because my mum was going to the gym and my sister was already training there. So, it was just where I already was. So I just started doing preschool, and then eventually I built up the levels, went to an elite or sort of like a club level program. Then I went to an elite level program. Then I moved to Birmingham because I was originally in Bristol, and I've been at City of Birmingham Gymnastics Club ever since then. And I mean, I'm happy with where I am, and I've been there for 11 years now, working my way up. Early gymnastics, I mean, if you look at back when I was in Bristol, I mean, I moved when I was 8 years old, so I don't remember that much of it. But what I do remember is doing like these intra club competitions. So just everyone in the club competing against each other, basically, like which you do with like rec kids now. And then I also remember going down to Baskervilles and doing some competitions there. I don't even remember how I did in them, but I'm pretty sure did at least somewhat well. But then coming to City of Birmingham, I remember it a bit better. So London Open, way back when, I think it was level 1 was when I was 9, and it was the year before that, so I was 8. So it was actually the year I moved to City of Birmingham, I won the London Open. It was basically doing club level routines, but I won that. Then the year after that, level 1, I came second in like all of the competitions that year. I did Piper's Vale, I did London Open, then I did elite grades or national finals, whatever you want to call it. Then the year after that, I came third, second, first in those same competitions. So it was a good start. And early gymnastics, that's when I sort of like really started to get into it and started to take it a bit more seriously. And it was also about that time, well, after the level 1 competitions, I got into the GB squad for the first time as well. And that was huge for me. I stayed there for 5 years. And I mean, it was nice to be sort of recognized. And it was really cool to be around all the other gymnasts and all the other coaches. So it was a really good experience to be in that position. And I was the youngest at that point as well. There was a couple of us, and then most of the other guys were older. So it was really cool to be around older gymnasts to see what they were doing and see all the skills they were doing. And like, it gives you ideas. And I think that's really useful. It gives you something to aspire to, but it also puts things into a perspective so you can see how far you can actually go, which I think is huge. And I believe they're still doing that now. I think they split it up into 3 years, but when I was doing it, they did the whole 6 years of elite grades. Everyone who got into squad from elite grades, all of those 6 years were in the same squad, which was really cool because you got to see the guys that were 14, 15 when you're 9 or 10, and that's 5 years older than you. And it's huge to see like all the bigger skills that they're doing. I think that was really cool. But over the years after that, I was still working, but it just sort of became, I don't really know what happened. I guess I sort of started to get comfortable, and I was doing worse and worse in competitions, and it sort of culminated in 2019. And then going into the national finals of 2019, I just had a horrible year, really, and had bad competitions. It was just a bad time, really. I started with London Open that year, I think. I did English and British or something like that, but I also did crap in those. Like, I'm going to go into that. I think 2019 British might have been the year when I broke my foot, did only pommels and fell twice on pommels. So that just sort of puts it into perspective. So I had no scores like that, like in that sort of regard. Then towards the end of the year, I did London Open elite grades and the compulsory routines. So everyone has the exact same routines to do, and absolutely not a great comp for me. Like vault, I think I didn't do the proper vault, so I literally got 0 for that vault. I think there was 2 though, so I landed the first one and like just didn't do the second one, so I got 0 for one of the vaults, which puts me 5 marks down or 4.5 marks down or whatever. Then I think I fell other than that as well, but like by that time my score's completely gone. So yeah, that comp was also completely gone. So I didn't have any scores for that year. So in the end, they deselected me from that squad, that training camp for 2020, which ended up being quite an important year to be selected because that's when we went into lockdown. So during that time, training was very hard because you had to sort of make it up as you went along. Like, the coaches would give you programs, but you were limited to what you had in the house, and there's no substitute for getting into the gym. As gymnasts, we all know that lockdown was hard, but when you got back into the gym, you know how hard you had to work, because you had to work twice as hard, because not only did you have to get back to where you were, you had to get back to where you should have been, considering you've missed 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 months of training. Depends on the restrictions that like in certain areas. I know we are like sort of middle of the road, like we're back in the gym earlier than us, some were later. But sort of you had to not only get back to where you were, but also get back to where you should have been, like pushing skills really, really hard, really fast, and getting to where you should be. And then in 2021, we went back into lockdown, which just completely shot everyone's progress. And I know a few people like quit, came back, but and I think that's fair because you're in a position where you can't actually get into the gym. So it's weird because you're trying to do a sport where you can't even do the sport. You can't. And you need to keep doing something. Otherwise, when you get back into the gym, you're just going to you're not going to have any fitness. You're not going to be able to do anything that you want to do. And it wasn't easy for anyone. It definitely wasn't easy for anyone. But for me specifically, because I had been out for so long, I felt such a drive and motivation to get where I wanted to be. And when I got back into the gym, I was like a machine. When I said it was really important, it was probably more important to get into squad that year than any other year, was because the people in squad were allowed to go back into the gym earlier than anyone else. So they were in 2 months before anyone else was. Like, I don't think they were doing as much as when everyone was allowed back in, but they were months ahead of us. So I had to work twice as hard to get back to where I wanted to be. And then at the end of 2021, in September 2021, had the British Championships. And because I'd worked so hard to get to that position, I was really prepared and was really ready for that competition. More so than I had been for most of the other ones beforehand. Like all of the ones in 2019, probably all of the ones back until maybe 2017 or so, I was more prepared. So I was confident, and I just wanted to get back competing for the first time in nearly 2 years at that point. And it wasn't the best competition, but I did enough. I came 5th all around, which is, it's all right. It did the job. So in the end, after that one, I got selected into the GB squad and to do my first international in France, the under-17 4-way international, which was huge for me because in the end, at the end of the day, my entire goal as a gymnast was just to represent Great Britain in an international competition. That was all I wanted. I didn't really care about anything else. I didn't really care about trying to do these huge competitions like the Olympics and World Championships. Obviously, long term, that's what I want. But in the end, the biggest thing for me was just to compete internationally one time. And obviously that's grown now, but just to be able to say that I had was absolutely insane for me. And it was a great feeling, and went to France, competed a lot better than I did at British, and it was about 2 months later. Competed a lot better, scored 2 marks higher all around. I think it was the difference between 72 and 74. Neither were my best. I think I carried a fall on pommel, my dismount didn't count on pommel. But it was certainly better, and it was the best score I'd ever gotten. So, it was huge for me. And then that gave me so much confidence going into the next year, into 2022, because I then got selected in to go to Stuttgart in 2022. And so the start of that year, we had 3 competitions. So we had English, then a week later we had Stuttgart, and then a week after that we had British. So for most people, it was fine because you had English, 2 weeks British. But because me and everyone who went to Stuttgart also did English and Stuttgart and then British, it was a lot harder because doing 3 consecutive weekends of competition, all-around competition, is quite hard. Well, nearly all-around competition for most of us. I think I only didn't do rings. But yeah, I mean, I didn't do very well. Well, I think my competitions got... Well, the best one was definitely English because I came second all-around. Got another new best all-around score. Again, like 2 marks higher than I had in 2021, 76, I think, 76.7 or so. So yeah, that was huge for me. And getting the medal at the English was also huge because I hadn't been able to get onto the podium for years and years before that. So being able to say that I was one of the best in the country, that was, well, for my age, that was huge. But yeah, and then Stuttgart was not a great competition. It was an amazing experience, an awesome international competition, and I loved it. But I just competed pretty poorly. Started on vault, and I was fine. Floor was fine, which was weird because I had like back injuries going into that one. But then high bar, I think I did squat half, fell the wrong way, and then P bars slipped on my undersummy, and then pommels, I jumped over the pommels, which is not something that gymnasts normally say. What ended up happening was I jumped up to do my shear. Normally your foot sort of stays behind the pommel horse when you jump up to do just like an A shear, just in, first leg swings over, back leg swings through, and switch legs. And then you pick up in circles. But then what I did was I jumped up, my foot slipped over the pommel, and then I just landed in front of the pommel with the pommel behind me, with my arm still on the handles. And I didn't really know what to do at that point. What do you do at that point? So that was interesting. But the annoying thing is, like, I've always struggled with pommels. Like getting through routines and stuff like that. I'm getting better now, but the annoying bit was that I then did a clean routine afterwards. I went through from the shear all the way to the dismount clean, and it was just it was a bit of a kick in the balls having to know that if I hadn't done that, I probably would have gone through a clean routine, and that was my last piece as well. So I mean, it wasn't a great finish, but Andre pulled me aside, the national coach pulled me aside afterwards and just said, these things happen, and in all fairness, it's just something that we can laugh about afterwards. It's not something that you need to dwell on. It's something that you shouldn't be doing and something that shouldn't happen again. But it's a funny story. And realistically, it's juniors. It's just for experience, which in the end it is. And it's quite funny. And it's something to be known for, at least. It's not the greatest thing, but it is something. And then the British after that was, it was okay. I made 3 finals, I think. Rings, weirdly enough, vault, and then high bar. Rings, I was never going to medal. I came 4th, weirdly enough, but rings has always been a really bad piece for me. I think moving forwards, what I'm going for is just a steady, solid score, something like what I'm sort of aiming for on floor as well. Just a steady, solid score that I know I can hit, that I'm not like concerned about at all, and then try and push on the rest of the pieces to try and like have a solid all-around score, and then like really push for a couple of the pieces like on P bars and high bar, because those are my best pieces. So going forwards, that's sort of what I'm going for. But yeah, Vault was weird because as a junior you can do like a double twisting cas and then a straight cas, and it counts as your 2 vaults. And I ended up getting a silver medal, which was weird because I never considered myself a vaulter. And then high bar I fell, which was annoying because high bar was, at that point, high bar was definitely my best piece. And it was annoying because it wasn't even an inconsistent piece for me. Like, I could get through the routine. It was just annoying because I couldn't seem to stay on, and that ended up being one of the main reasons that I didn't end up being selected to go to Junior Euros that year, because as much as I had improved from 2019 to 2022, it was all well and good, but I couldn't perform as consistently as they wanted me to, and as I should have been doing. So it was a bit annoying, and I ended up being second reserve for Junior Euros that year, which was quite disheartening because it's not a great place to be, second reserve, because you really want to be in that team and you're so close, but it ended up not being what I needed to do. Like, it ended up just not being the way things panned out, which is fine. It is what it is, and you sort of have to take that and then just move on with it, because you can't, dwelling on it doesn't help anyone. But yeah, I did move on, ended up breaking my wrist, but that was towards the end of the year. There was no competitions coming up, so I just sort of moved on with that. Ended up getting back, and similar to what happened in 2019, 2020, and then that sort of carried forward in 2021. So basically what happened after I got out of lockdown, I was just on it again, just non-stop, back on routine grind, back on trying to get them consistent for routines, because in the end, that was what I was missing. And even easier routines done well was really enough. And realistically, I just needed to get that execution up. So that's what I was going for the start of 2023, which ended up being what happened. So I did the Scottish as sort of like a preparation competition 2 weeks before the English. But then, I didn't do very well. I scored like 74 all around with like 3 falls or something, which was, it wasn't great, but it was a practice competition, and it was just to get me back in the swing of things, because I hadn't competed since June 2022 with the British teams, which, side note, one of the best competitions I've ever done, because it's such a cool experience to have sort of that team around you and that camaraderie. And that's why I love team competition so much, because you've got those people around you, especially at British teams, because they train with you, they know what you put into it, they know you, and they're always behind you, and it's so good. There are benefits and drawbacks with everything. Like, you can see it in 2 ways. So in individual competitions, you can see as, yes, this is just for me, and therefore I've got more motivation, but also at the same time, you do not want to let your team down. So, pick your poison, I guess. But yeah, one of the best competitions I've been to and competed at, both that year, 2023, and this year. It's an amazing competition and highly recommend. But yeah, back to 2023. So I hadn't competed since then, and so I just did the Scottish as sort of a warm-up comp, so I wasn't too worried about it. But then going into the English, I was so prepared and so ready. And I sort of knew going into it that I was going to have a good comp. And so I went around, I think I fell once on a McCutts on P-bars, but other than that, it was a clean comp and one of the best competitions I've ever had. Ended up scoring 78.8, and yeah, it was an amazing competition, amazing experience, because that was the highest score I had scored before that point, and I knew I could score relatively close to 80 with the same routines, just without the fall. And that was huge for me, because that's like the sort of goal you're reaching for junior all-around scores. Like that's the top level. Because of that experience, and because I ended up winning that competition, I got selected alongside Alex, Yulshin Cash, and George Atkins. The episodes are coming up. We all went to Junior Worlds, which was an incredible experience. It hands down one of the best experiences of my life, being there in the hotel with them, surrounded by other athletes, with other gymnasts, just being around such raw talent and hard work and incredible athletes was amazing. Because seeing all the Japanese guys and Halbert Haas, who, I mean, just won a silver medal at the Olympic Championships, the Olympic Games on high bar, on horizontal bar. Seeing him compete in person and competing against him in the high bar final was just incredible. Like an amazing experience. Yes, I was nowhere near him, but still cool. And being able to be surrounded by that was just amazing. And the other two will say that it was an amazing experience. And being around that made me think, and qualifying 7th in the all-around, qualifying in 7th, all around, made me think, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not as far away as I thought. Like, I had one of the best competitions of my life all around, like in the qualifications. I did not carry a fall, the first clean comp I've had in years, like years and years and years. And it was amazing because I scored 79.4, and with international judging, there wasn't huge mistakes. There was like a few tenths here and there, but that's going to happen. No one's going to have an absolutely perfect comp. That was the closest I could have possibly asked for. And it was just amazing to know that I wasn't actually as far off as I thought I was. And being able to say that I qualified 7th in the world as a junior is amazing. Yes, as a junior, so it's not the same as saying I qualified 7th in the world as a senior, but it's a start. It's not where I want to be, but I'm getting there. That's sort of the sort of theme that's cropping up. Going beyond that, I had another international beyond that. Had British teams that year, which was, again, an amazing competition. Trying some new skills. Not my greatest competition, but I think that was going to happen because of the sort of lull after Junior Worlds. And then after that, or like sort of around that sort of time, I had A-levels as well. So it was a pretty stressful few weeks when I had a competition in France and British teams in and around the times of my A-levels. And it was very hard to sort of manage my time with that. But it sort of taught me that you can always do more than you realize, because I didn't realize, like, I didn't know how I was going to get through that. I didn't know what the best way of doing it was. I didn't know sort of how to sort of cope with all the stress. It was one of the most stressful times of my life, but I got through it, and you realize that you always find a way through it, and you adapt, you learn, found a way through that somehow, and ended up getting to this year. I pushed for the entirety of the rest of the year for new skills for the start of this year. I had a few injuries, had my shoulder injury, this one, because I've now got this one. And into the start of this year, I had the Welsh, and then 2 weeks after that I had the English, and then 2 weeks after that I had the British. And I did the Welsh. I mean, not my best combat. I had 3/4, I think, scored 77, which, I mean, looking back 2 years ago, that would have been an incredible score. And sort of having that perspective is really helpful. And then I was ready for English. I wanted to do the same thing I did last year. I wanted to smash out the English, clean comp, get a good score. And then I did rings and I broke my ankle. In the warm-up, I did a double back full and landed short, and it's sort of one of those pains where you think, okay, it's going to happen and it's just going to go away. And then it just sort of persisted. I was like, okay, this is quite bad. I jumped up, did my routine, landed it, presented to the judges, and then just walked off to the edge of the mat, so not very far, just to the edge of the mat, sat down, and then I just didn't stand back up. And, well, I think I hopped to the chair as well, but I just couldn't put any pressure through it. And at that point, I was still adamant. I was like, I'm going to do the rest of this competition. But in the end, the physio that was there ended up saying, you're not going to be able to do anything for the rest of the competition. I was like, so I ended up going to the hospital. They said it was broken, and I was in a cast for 6 weeks. And I mean, I kept up with some level of training. I did a bit of P-bars, a bit of pommel, a bit of high bar, with like an ankle weight to balance it out, loads of conditioning, that sort of stuff. And then got back into training with the cast newly off 8 weeks before British teams this year. And that was the goal. I wanted to do British teams. As soon as I did my ankle, I looked at the calendar going forwards, and I was like, okay, what's possible for me to do here? And I looked forward, and it was British teams. I was like, cool, that's what I'm going to go for. I want to do my full routines. And what I ended up not sort of looking at was that it was 14 weeks ahead. And I was like, that's loads of time. I've got time. And then I didn't break it down into 6 weeks and then 8 weeks, because 6 weeks was the amount of time I had my cast in. 8 weeks was the time between that and having the competition. And it was like 8 weeks is normally the time you have for an entire comp prep. But the issue with that is that normally when you go into a comp prep, you are doing 6 pieces, and sometimes you have been doing halves or combinations, and you're half ready to do routines. I was not ready to do routines on any apparatus. I could barely do any of the skills that I wanted to do for my competition. I wanted to do 4 apparatuses. I wanted to do pommel, rings, P-bar, high bar. That was sort of what I wanted. But I knew I was only going to be able to land properly 3 weeks before the competition. So I wasn't going to be able to do 4 routines until 3 weeks before the competition. And going into this, I was like, yeah, that's fine. And so I didn't realize what I was putting myself through. And I pushed way too hard, way too soon. And ended up, I injured my wrist, and then I got ligament damage in my finger. That was unrelated though. I just stubbed my finger on it. Understood me half, happens. And then I also got an injury in my shoulder, which I've now learned is some sort of inflammation in like a second joint, collarbone. I don't know. It's complicated, but I ended up just doing too much too soon, and sort of in the end, because I ended up wanting to do floor and vault as well, because Gabe and Josh, Gabriel Langston and Josh Nathan, who weren't doing them, who were in the team for the competition, weren't doing those 2 pieces because of Gabe's back and Josh's knee. So both of them were like, definitely can't do it. But I was like, I'm out of the cast now. My ankle's probably healed, so maybe I can do it. And I ended up competing both of them, even though the physio did say I had a good chance of breaking my ankle again. So I just I just didn't weigh up the risks. But in the end, I'm happy I did it. It was the first time competing since, well, English, I guess, which was a couple months, which is pretty normal for gymnastics. But then, first time since I broke my ankle. So it was nice to get something done. Nowhere near the routines I wanted because of my finger. I couldn't do underbars on P bars. I ended up not doing rings because of my shoulder, which is a decision I made on the day. Vault was my full vault. Floor was a very, very watered down routine. I ended up falling anyway. High bar was a pain. It was a full-ish routine. I still don't think I had as much time as I wanted on it going into the competition, but it was definitely my most prepared routine and my most prepared piece of apparatus. And then pommels was all right, to be fair. I mean, it was the one piece that it was all right because a handstand dismount on pommel doesn't really put any stress on your ankle, so it's all right. So that was like the one piece I was actually all right with. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of a lesson. Just don't do too much too soon. And when you've had an injury, ease into it. Unless you're doing like the Olympics or a major competition, then you can do it. I did seriously put myself at some sort of risk of injuring myself further by doing floor and vault. I just did what the team sort of needed for me to do. So ended up being fine. And I'm happy with what I did. So getting through that was quite hard because I knew through the process of those 14 weeks was quite hard because I knew what I wanted to do. I knew where I wanted to go, but I knew how hard it was going to be. And I'd see everyone else doing the skills and I just wanted to be doing that. And it is quite hard to be able to block that out and move forward with your training and try and be sensible on your injuries as well. It's very easy to overdo it. It's easy to not be careful. And it's very easy to work through pain, which I think is a little bit backwards because you would normally think you're in pain, so you stop. But as an athlete and as a gymnast, it's very easy to be in pain and then keep going because you want the end result. But in the end, that's what makes it harder. That's what makes it less likely to be achievable because you're going to be putting yourself in more danger of injuring yourself further and putting yourself out of commission for even longer. And so those goals that you might want to be at, they might be like mine. And in the end, I talked to Dan Smiley about this on the podcast I have with him, but goals are hugely important. And for me, there's a very, very broad one, and it's not a very good one, but in the end, it's just what I want to achieve in gymnastics and in life. I just want to be the best version of myself. And in gymnastics, it's the best gymnast I can be. So whether that be Olympics or just where I'm at now, as long as I've put my all into it and I know I've done everything I can to get where I want to be, then I will be happy with my journey and I'll be happy with how far I've gotten. And that means not giving up, but it also means setting sort of smaller goals and stepping stones to get where you want to be. And for me, the next goal will be, well, firstly, staying in squad, but I don't know how likely that is at this point. And then beyond that, it's a senior international of some sort, probably like a World Cup, maybe like a Challenge Cup, maybe. I don't know. But that's that level. Then beyond that, a senior, a major. So Europeans is probably the first one. Then Worlds is above that. Then obviously Olympics is above that. And that's the end goal forever. For most people, most athletes in general, most sports people out there, Olympics is the top goal, the biggest thing that they can do, except for footballers and basketballers in America. There are very few other examples, but for most sports out there, for most sports people, the Olympics is the big one. But you got to think of the goals and the little stepping stones that you need to do to get there and what you need to do to get into those goals. I've heard that you need like the long-term goals, but then you need the shorter term goals. So like 10 years as an example, it could be 5, it could be 4, it could be like a cycle's long, then yearly, then monthly. But then you need to think about like weekly and daily to think about what do you need to do today to get to the end goal. I need to do this skill because it's what I want to do in the Olympics in 4 years' time. That's a bit extreme, but it's the little baby steps to get you to where you want to be. It's putting in good performances in competitions. It's building combinations. It's doing skills to get consistency, to put in routines, to get consistency in competitions, to put in good performances, to get into teams, to then be put into international teams, to then gain the recognition in the national coaches, to then go further and further and further with the same sort of process. So it all starts with gaining the consistency of the skills. And in the end, the goal can be just like 3 things you want to do today. I want to do some double doubles on floor. I want to do some 2.5 double fronts floor, whatever it ends up being. I want to do some undersums on P-bars and sheer handstands on pommel. Like that was pretty close to what I did today. Today being very relative because this is going to come out in a while. But it can be very specific, or it can be broad. Even in those goals, you can say, I want to do 3 double doubles today. Or it can be, I want to do double doubles today. It could be, I want to do 5 undersummies, 2 of which are undersummy halves, 2 of which are undersummy ones, within the first 30 minutes or 20 minutes of my P-bars session. Like, it could be that specific, or it could just be, I want to do undersummies, undersummy halves, and undersummy ones today on P-bars. Like, it can be anything. But I think having those is quite important, and knowing what you're going to do and how it's going to help you is huge, because it helps you to be able to do it more frequently and more consistently, and be able to do it even when you're struggling, and it helps you get through the bad days. And for me, that's what this podcast is about. It's about learning from other gymnasts. It's learning that we're not all that different. We have the same sort of experiences. Everyone gets injured. Everyone has bad days. Everyone struggles. And it's learning what you can do to help yourself, but it's also learning about the technical stuff. Like, you can talk all day about the new code and what's going to change, and or what releases are changing on high bar, and what skills are going down on P bars. And I can say all the answers, and I will say all the answers, and we'll be figuring out sort of the optimized routine, for example. But in the end, it's different for everyone, because everyone's a different size, shape, technique. Like, everyone's got their own way of doing things. It's a common ground that we all love gymnastics. It's a common ground that we want to learn more. And it's a common ground that we all have these bad days. We all have these experiences of injuries and competitions that don't go right. Even the best of the best, even Hashimoto Daiki, he fell on high bar in qualifications, so he couldn't retain his Olympic title. And he had a rotter in the Olympic final, all-around final, so he didn't retain his Olympic title. He didn't even get a medal. And that sort of puts it in perspective. The best of the best from Tokyo couldn't do it this year. If you're struggling, then it happens. But it's about what you do after that. I'm sure that he will be back in the gym, grinding. I don't know if we'll see him again. It depends how his competitions go. But that's the nature of the sport. You never know what's going to happen next. You want to keep going, and you want to keep working at what will get you the results you want. It's never guaranteed. But isn't that half the fun of it? I hope you've enjoyed the Game Gymnastics Podcast, first episode. I hope I'll catch you in the next one. And thank you for listening. Feel free to follow and do whatever the hell you want. But I will catch you in the next one.